I never thought I'd find myself in a hospital bed, tubes in my arms, fighting for every breath, only to feel my phone buzz with a text from my own son. My eyes blurred as I tried to focus on the screen. "Mortgage is due." "No, how are you, Mom?" "No, I'm here for you." Just that. Mortgage is due, like my life was an afterthought, a bill that needed to be paid. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling more alone than I ever had in my entire life. The monitor beeped steadily, reminding me that I was still here, still alive. But for what? For him to treat me like a bank account? Like an inconvenience to be managed with a single text? In that moment, something shifted inside me. He didn't know. He had no idea the house wasn't even in his name anymore. I'd signed it over weeks earlier to someone who'd shown me true kindness. And as I closed my eyes and let the pain fade for a second, I thought, oh, he's in for a surprise he'll never see coming. So I decided to, before I tell you how it all unfolded, hit that like button, share where you're watching from, and subscribe so you never miss a story like this. Now, let's dive in. I'm Helen Edwards, 72, a retired librarian from a small town in North Carolina. People always said I was the glue that held my family together, calm, reliable, and generous to a fault. But lying in that hospital bed, I realized I'd been taken for granted too many times. I never thought I'd be the kind of mother who'd end up feeling like a burden to her own child. But sometimes, the people you love the most end up teaching you the hardest lessons. My name is Helen Edwards, and for 72 years, I've been the one holding the fort. I bought that house with my own sweat and tears. I was a single mother after my husband passed unexpectedly. Every month, I clipped coupons and worked overtime at the library just to make the mortgage payment. There were days I skipped meals so my son, Daniel, could have new shoes or a birthday party he'd remember. I remember the pride on his face the day we hung his college acceptance letter on the fridge. I thought all those sacrifices would buy me some security, a sense of belonging, maybe even some gratitude. After Daniel got married, I didn't want to intrude, so I tried to stay in the background. I moved into the guest room when I needed help recovering from a surgery. It was supposed to be temporary, but it stretched into months, and I began to feel like an uninvited guest in my own family. Still, I never expected what came next. That house, my house, was the only asset I had. I'd paid it off with every spare penny, every sleepless night. I always imagined that when the time came, Daniel would help me, just like I'd helped him. After all, I had put his name on the house deed as a gesture of trust, a legacy, I thought, of all that I'd given him. When I got sick again, this time, it was serious, a stroke that landed me in the ICU. I thought he'd be at my side. But lying there, hooked up to machines, I realized he was nowhere to be found. That was the day the text came in. "Mortgage is due," he wrote, as if I was nothing but a line item in his budget. That text stung more than any pain in my chest, because he didn't know that I'd quietly transferred ownership to a trust, managed by my lawyer and safe from any of his financial messes. I'd protected myself, but he didn't know. As I lay there staring at that message, I wondered how a son I'd given everything to could treat me like a bill to be paid. That's when I decided I was done being the quiet, dependable mother. I had a secret he didn't see coming, and that was the beginning of my own kind of revenge. Lying there in the ICU, I could hear the steady beep of the heart monitor, a reminder that every breath I took was borrowed time. My body felt weak, but my mind was sharp enough to catch every sound in that sterile room. The nurses whispered to each other, machines hummed, and my own heartbeat echoed in my ears. I'd never felt so alone. That's when my phone buzzed on the little plastic tray beside me. The screen glowed with the text from Daniel. "Mortgage is due," it read. No greeting, no concern, not even a question about how I was feeling. Just 2 words, "Mortgage is due." My heart sank. I stared at that message, the letters smearing together through my tears. This was my son, The same boy I'd held through fevers. The one I'd stayed up all night with when he was scared of the dark. The same boy who once promised, "I'll always take care of you, Mom." I'd given everything for him. Every ounce of strength I had. Every dollar I could spare. And now, when I was at my weakest, he was demanding money from me. Money I no longer owed, but he didn't know that. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. Maybe he was worried about bills or confused, but deep down, I knew better. I'd heard the tension in his voice lately, the way he'd started treating me like an inconvenience rather than a mother. When I'd moved into the guest room after my surgery, I thought it would bring us closer. Instead, it seemed to push us further apart. In that hospital bed, I thought of all the times he'd asked for help. Money for the down payment on his first house, the loan for his business venture, the tuition for his children's private school. I never said no, even when it meant I'd eat canned soup for a month. But now, he was asking for something I couldn't give. I'd made sure of that years ago, when I quietly put the house into a trust. I'd done it to protect myself, but also, maybe, to protect him from himself. The next text came minutes later. "I can't cover it this month. You'll need to handle it." As if I could just log on to my bank account from my hospital bed and transfer money I didn't have. As if he didn't know the weight of his words. He followed up with, "Don't let it go into default, Mom. That would ruin my credit." My credit. His credit. That's what he cared about. Not my health, not my life, but his credit score. Lying there, I felt something inside me harden. I'd spent my whole life giving, sacrificing, loving unconditionally. But this was different. This was betrayal. I realized in that moment that I couldn't rely on him anymore. That the son I'd raised with so much hope had turned into someone I barely recognized. Someone who saw me as a burden, an ATM, a line item on a spreadsheet. I closed my eyes, let the tears slip down my cheeks, and made a promise to myself. I'd never let him hurt me like this again. He thought he was the only one with power. He didn't know I had the last move, and I was about to play it. As I lay there in that sterile hospital room, the realization settled over me like a heavy blanket. I'd been carrying him for far too long. Daniel, my only son. The same boy I once cheered for at soccer games. The same boy I'd nursed through chickenpox and heartbreak. Now, he'd turned into a man who saw me as nothing more than a financial lifeline. After that text about the mortgage, I did what any mother would do. I tried to make sense of it. Even hooked up to IVs, with nurses checking my vitals every hour, I reached for my phone and started combing through my records. That's when I saw it. Transfer after transfer. Small ones at first, just to cover groceries, he'd said. Then bigger ones. An emergency car repair, a small business loan. I'd told myself it was normal, that parents help their kids. But deep down, I'd known the truth. He'd been treating my savings like his own personal piggy bank. And now he was asking me to save his house. Again. The house he'd promised me I could always come home to if I needed it. The house I'd signed over to him when he swore he'd take care of me. That promise felt like dust now. I remembered every moment I'd sacrificed to help him. Picking up extra shifts at the library, skipping vacations, even dipping into my own retirement funds. I'd been proud to do it at the time because he was my son. He'd always been my world. But now, lying in that bed, I felt a bitterness I'd never known before. I wasn't just disappointed, I was angry. Angry that he'd seen my kindness as weakness. Angry that he'd taken every bit of my love and turned it into a transaction. And angrier still that I'd let it happen. That's when I remembered the papers I'd signed. The ones that shifted the house's ownership into a trust with a dear friend as trustee. Daniel didn't know that yet. He thought he held all the cards, but he was about to learn I'd been playing a different game. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. He wasn't going to stop unless I made him. I'd taught him to believe I'd always bail him out, always put him first. But that was over now. As the days ticked by, I saw the cracks in his stories. The way he avoided my calls. The way he changed the subject when I asked about his own finances. He was living beyond his means, expecting me to pick up the pieces. And now that I was at my weakest, he'd chosen that moment to demand even more. That night, I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of every time I'd put him before myself. And I decided, right then and there, that I wouldn't do it again. I wouldn't be his safety net. I wouldn't be his silent partner in his endless cycle of spending. He thought I was powerless in that hospital bed, but he was wrong. I had the trust. I had the documents. And for the first time in my life, I had the strength to say no. He was about to learn what it meant to underestimate the woman who raised him. Lying in that hospital bed, I found a strength I hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was the beeping of the machines around me, or the quiet moments between nurse checks, but something inside me snapped into place, like a bone that had been broken and finally set right. I couldn't let Daniel keep pulling the strings. Not anymore. I remembered the trust papers I'd signed before I fell ill, transferring the house to my niece, Sarah. She'd always been there for me. She'd call on Sundays, help me with the groceries, and ask about my day. She'd never once made me feel like I was an obligation. She knew the story behind that house, the years I'd spent scrimping and saving to pay it off. Every nail, every coat of paint, every inch of garden I'd poured my soul into. She understood it wasn't just a building, it was my life's work. That's why I'd chosen her. Not because I wanted to punish Daniel, but because I needed someone who'd protect the home I'd built, who'd see it for what it was. A safe place, a legacy. I thought back to the conversations we'd had about it. Aunt Helen, she'd said once, "I'll always make sure it's in the family." And I believed her. As the sun set outside the window, I reached for my phone. My hands trembled, but my heart felt steady. I sent Sarah a message. "I need you to finalize the paperwork. I want it all in your name now." I didn't explain everything. There would be time for that later. But I knew she'd understand. Minutes later, her reply buzzed on my screen. "Aunt Helen, of course. I'll handle it. You rest and focus on getting better." A wave of relief washed over me. I wasn't alone in this anymore. The next morning, a lawyer came by to check in on me. He'd helped me with the trust, and I told him I wanted to make it official. He nodded with quiet understanding, no judgment in his eyes. "You're doing the right thing," he said. "It's time to protect yourself." I felt a calm strength building inside me, like I'd finally taken the wheel after years of being a passenger. Daniel had always believed he could guilt me into doing whatever he wanted, but this time, I wasn't giving in. I was choosing myself. As I signed the final papers, a small smile crept across my face. For the first time in years, I felt like I was steering my own life, and I promised myself, no matter what Daniel said or did next, I wouldn't let him drag me back into that cycle of guilt and manipulation. I was done being his safety net. I was ready to stand on my own and let the chips fall where they may. The day I left the hospital, the air felt different. Crisp, like I'd finally cleared the fog that had hung over me for too long. I rode home with Sarah, who insisted on driving me, her voice a soothing anchor in the whirlwind of emotions I carried. When we pulled into the driveway, Daniel was already there, arms crossed, foot tapping like a spoiled child who'd been told no for the first time in his life. I could see the impatience on his face, the same look he'd give me whenever I tried to talk about boundaries or respect. I stepped out of the car and felt every inch of my 72 years, and yet I also felt lighter than I had in decades. I looked him straight in the eye. "Mom," he started, voice dripping with forced concern. "We need to talk about the mortgage. I've been calling you, but..." I held up my hand. "Stop right there, Daniel. I know what you did." He blinked, thrown off by the firmness in my voice. "What are you talking about?" I took a deep breath, feeling the strength of every hard-earned lesson. "You sent me a text while I was fighting for my life in the ICU, asking for mortgage money." His face flushed. "It was just a reminder, Mom. You know how these payments work." I shook my head. "No, Daniel, it wasn't just a reminder. It was another way you tried to control me. But guess what? That house, my house, it's not yours to hold over me anymore." His jaw dropped. "What are you talking about?" I felt a calmness I didn't expect. "I transferred the house to Sarah. She's the new owner now. So if you're waiting for a check, you'll be waiting a long time." His eyes widened, disbelief painting every line of his face. "You, what? Mom, you can't do that after everything I've done for you?" My voice broke, but I forced it steady. "After everything I've done for you, Daniel. The years I spent scrimping and saving to give you a good life. The sacrifices I made so you could go to college. The way I gave you the keys to that house thinking you'd take care of it. Of me." He looked like he'd been slapped. "Mom, it's not like that." I raised a hand again. "Stop. I'm done listening to your excuses. I'm done letting you treat me like a bank account. Sarah's name is on the deed now, and I'm finally choosing me." For a long moment, he just stared at me, mouth open. Then his voice cracked. "What am I supposed to do now? Where am I supposed to go?" I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But I reminded myself of every sleepless night, every time I'd sacrificed my own needs to make sure he never wanted for anything. "That's for you to figure out," I said softly but firmly. "I've done enough." Tears welled up in his eyes, but I didn't reach out to comfort him this time. I stood my ground, hands trembling just a little, but heart steady. He turned and walked away, shoulders slumped, the weight of his choices finally settling in. I watched him go, 1,000 memories flashing behind my eyes. But I didn't chase him. For the first time in a long time, I chose to let him carry his own burdens, and I chose to walk forward, lighter than I'd ever felt. When the dust finally settled, I found myself sitting at the old kitchen table. The same one where Daniel once did his homework. The same one I'd spent countless evenings preparing meals for a family that no longer felt like mine. The quiet felt different now. Not the heavy silence of dread, but a peaceful hush, a space that allowed me to breathe. I thought back to all the times I'd sacrificed my own needs, my own happiness, just to keep the peace, to make sure everyone else was comfortable. I'd given Daniel everything I had, emotionally, financially, and more, never questioning whether he deserved it. I'd assumed that loyalty ran both ways, that blood meant something. But when I lay in that hospital bed, tubes and wires holding me together, and saw that text, "Mortgage is due," it felt like the final blow. I didn't think I'd ever recover from that, but here I am, stronger, wiser, and finally free. I remember when Sarah came to visit after the transfer went through. She brought a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite, and sat across from me, her eyes soft but determined. "Aunt Helen," she'd said, "I'll make sure you're taken care of, not because you owe me, but because you matter." That's when I realized what real love looks like. It doesn't come with strings attached or bills to pay. It's a quiet, steady presence that says, "You're worth it just because you're you." I wish I could say Daniel came around, that he called to apologize or tried to make things right. But he didn't. The last time I saw him was on the driveway. Tears in his eyes, anger on his lips. He couldn't understand why I'd finally chosen myself. And maybe that's okay. Maybe some people aren't meant to come with you into the next chapter. I've started going to a book club at the library, reconnecting with old friends, even picking up painting again. Something I'd abandoned when life got too busy. Each stroke of the brush feels like a small rebellion, a declaration that my life is my own now. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about self-respect. It's about telling the world and yourself that you matter too. Sometimes I still think about Daniel, how his smile used to light up a room, how I once believed he'd never hurt me. But those memories belong to another time, another me. The woman sitting here now has learned that love without respect isn't love at all. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just free. I know now that I don't owe anyone my peace of mind, and I won't trade it again for a seat at someone else's table. I've got my own table now, and the people who sit with me, like Sarah, know how to love me without conditions. I smile at that thought, a real, honest smile, because this is what peace looks like. A cup of tea in the morning sun, a good book, a phone that only rings when someone who cares is calling. I stand up, stretch my arms wide, and breathe in the Florida air, fresh and warm like the beginning of a brand new day. This is my life now, my terms, my rules, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. What would you do if your own child treated you like an ATM? Would you forgive them, hoping they'd change? Or would you choose your own peace, your own independence? I'd love to hear your stories, your moments of strength, your lessons learned, or maybe even the forgiveness you found in your heart. Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful, real-life tales of resilience and family dynamics. Your voice matters, and your story might inspire someone else today.